Hello everyone, Ryan here with another 2020 Subaru Outback video for you. Now in this video, it's going to be kind of a little bit different. It's going to be more of a conversational video, maybe a little bit longer than the normal videos I produce. But what I've done is I've downloaded this TechTIPS newsletter. I don't know if you can see that here. I've printed it out here. This is a newsletter that Subaru produces, and they make available to retailers, mechanics, people who like to work on their cars and things like that. Now, sometimes I like to work on my own vehicle, and I wanted to get access to the service manual and other information available for the Outback. So you can do this. I think it's techinfo.subaru.com, and you do have to pay for a subscription, and it is not cheap. It costs about $35 for 3 days, or several $1,000s a year to gain access to the system. So I just paid for 3 days of access and downloaded some information relevant to the 2020 Outback, just to help me understand how this vehicle works, as well as help me repair it on my own if I decide to do that. So while I was there, I downloaded this TechTIPS special edition from November, and it's filled with all kinds of useful information about the 2020 Outback and Legacy, specifically to this main display, and some of the questions they're hearing from customers related to using this system. Now, obviously, I've mentioned in all my videos, I don't work for Subaru or a Subaru retailer. I'm just an owner, and I just logged in and put in my credit card and downloaded this information, and I want to pass it off to you guys so you can kind of understand where Subaru is coming from maybe on some of these items. As well as talk about sort of common issues or common questions that come up especially with the new display. So we're going to go right into it by looking at the very first item, which they say is map orientation. So if I open up, if you have a trim with the map or the navigation system, this is the display. And what they're doing, I guess where people are getting confused is with this button up here above the plus and minus. This changes the map display. And you'll notice that in only some of these modes, it displays street signs, or street names rather. So if you're confused about that, that's how you change that mode. Some people were confused about that. You can see that I have a work in homesteading here that displays that information, and it shows you your time and stuff like that. If you haven't seen our series on navigation videos, go check that out. You can kind of get some more information about how to use this system, but some people were wondering, hey, how do I change the map orientation? And that's how you do it. Okay, the next issue that comes up is that some people are saying that their navigation system doesn't show the right information. It's showing that they are in New York City somewhere. I want to say Manhattan. Yeah, Manhattan, New York City. So if you go into your let me see if I can change this here so we can zoom out. There we go. Oh, whoops. Need to be in the same mode. There we go. Now let's see if I can zoom out further. There we go. Keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, well, we've got the globe. Oh, hooray. So if you see your arrow, like if we were seeing our arrow over here in Manhattan, in New York, and we were wondering what was going on, that is a common issue. And Subaru says that it's related to the pre-delivery inspection fuse not being in the delivery position. So if you're seeing your GPS display show that you're in New York City or Manhattan, your retailer did not perform the pre-delivery inspection correctly. So I recommend you go back to your retailer and say, hey, show me the PDI checklist. I want to see it. If you don't know what the PDI checklist is, that's a pre-delivery inspection checklist that Subaru puts in the service manual, which your retailer should have access to. And it includes a whole bunch of checks. And so if they missed something like not moving the PDI fuse, there's a good chance they missed a whole bunch of other stuff. So go back to your retailer and have them fix that for you. Make sure they do the PDI correctly, and get after their service department. Make sure that they're working those issues out for you. So that's issue number 2. All right, so issue number 3 is artwork appearance on the center information display. So this is an issue if we come in here into the radio. Turn that down, sorry about that. When you're in here in the radio, you'll see this little display up here that looks like little white mountains. And then if you're listening to a radio station, let me see if I can find one that has graphics. Yeah, like a graphic like this. If it's showing album art or a little graphic up here, you'll notice that when you start driving, it'll go back to those little white mountains, these little mountains up here in the corner. In fact, you only need to be going about 2 or 3 miles an hour before it switches from that album art to these little white mountain icons. That is intentional. That is not an error. It is a normal characteristic for the artwork to disappear. And let me actually read to you what they say. Subaru says this behavior occurs when using all audio sources, including Bluetooth streaming and media. So it'll turn that to the white mountains no matter what. And it says, please explain to customers this is a normal operating characteristic intended to reduce distraction. Replacing the head unit will not change this characteristic. In other words, it is working as designed when you see that display disappear. You'll notice that when you come to a stoplight, all of a sudden the album art will show up, and then when you start driving again, it'll disappear. That's what's going on. That is intentional. Subaru intends the vehicle to behave that way. Now, we could probably argue whether it's really a distraction or not. I personally think it's more distracting having it change than just having the album art there. And I also think it's not very considerate to passengers who might want to look at the album art or something like that. Plus the white mountains, really? I mean, why even display it at that point? Why even show anything there at all? So I kind of am in the camp with a lot of other owners. It would be nice if we could just either turn that off as a feature and display the album art all the time, or just remove the feature altogether. I mean, if we're not going to show the album art most of the time while we're driving, why even have it? Just turn it off. But that is something that Subaru apparently is getting a lot of questions from owners on, because they put it in this special edition of TechTIPS to let people know that that is not an error. That is how it works. Now, the next issue is engine auto start-stop operation. So this is something that is probably the most talked about thing on Subaru Outback forums, Legacy forums. Everyone's talking about auto start-stop and how do you turn it off and how do you permanently disable it. Well, there is no way to permanently disable it. You cannot permanently disable it. The easiest way I found to disable it temporarily is just to push this button over here on the right, the electronic defrost button. Then auto start-stop won't function. There are actually about 20-something sensors that determine when auto start-stop will turn on or off. And all of those sensors have to be reporting, ready to go before auto start-stop will even work. And one of those sensors checks to see if this button over here is on, and if it is, it won't start, or it won't enable the auto start-stop feature. So that's the way that I tend to turn it off. And one thing I maybe want to mention is that if you haven't given auto start-stop a fair chance, I recommend that you take a month or two and really try to live with it. You might notice that as you use it more and more, you'll find that you actually have a lot of control, especially with the brake pedal. Because when you're using the brake pedal, the pressure of the brake pedal changes whether auto start-stop will fire or not. For example, if you push down all the way on the brake pedal or firmly, the engine will stop. But if you press down just a little bit more, like a little bit harder, the engine will come back on. Or if you press lightly on the brake, it will turn back on. Or if you press firmly and then pull up on the brake just slightly, just enough to hold the vehicle, the auto start-stop won't fire. So there's a bunch of different ways. As you get to know the vehicle better, you can probably figure out how to live with auto start-stop. And one thing that we do have to remember is that this is a feature designed to reduce emissions and improve air quality. So it doesn't really save you very much fuel. It's not really a fuel economy thing, although the EPA does allow vehicle manufacturers to claim like a little bit of an additional mileage efficiency by having Auto StartStop work. And the way that they do the testing is why manufacturers make this turn on by default when you have this installed in your vehicle. It's not really Subaru doing this. It's really them trying to work with the US government on mileage and emission standards and a bunch of other stuff. And if you have a system that automatically resets it each time you restart the vehicle, then the EPA will let you test the vehicle as though start-stop were always enabled. If you allow vehicle owners to permanently disable the feature, then the EPA requires that you test it in both modes and then average the results. And then obviously that's going to lower gas mileage. And also, if you just sort of understand the mindset of Subaru, where they care so much about the environment, their commitment to the national parks and other things, the emissions and pollution are a big factor here. And so having that system turn off your vehicle, it's really about emissions. It's not really about mileage. In Utah here, where I live, air pollution is a real concern, and especially in the winter when we have inversions and things like that. And so I feel like learning to use this system is a good way to try to help alleviate this situation a little bit. However, this is clearly an issue for owners because Outback or the Subaru folks have explained how to turn this off on the Outback and Legacy by going into the little car icon here on the left, choosing others over here on this tab, and then turning Auto StartStop off right there. That's the fastest way to do it if you just want it off. But I find that the easiest way is to actually just hit that defrost button. Now, obviously in the summer or something like that, you're worried about the system overheating or causing problems or something. So you might need to come in here to the car, come in here to other, and turn off Auto StartStop that way. So it takes about 3 button pushes to turn it off, and you do have to do it each time you restart the vehicle. So again, I recommend that you just try to kind of get used to it. If not, then and that's how you turn it off. So the next issue that Subaru is saying that they're getting questions on relates to sound output delay following a system reboot. So if we restart the vehicle or restart the display, maybe do a soft reboot or something like that, there's going to be some lag, particularly when you immediately get in the vehicle, put it in reverse, and start driving or start backing out. There are so many sensors that have to turn on and get calibrated that you pretty much can't do anything else to the vehicle while it's in that mode. And they said that this is due to the reason why operation of some controls, like turning of the volume knob or touch display, might appear out of sync and have small amounts of lag, are related to the dedicated or related to tasks that are dedicated to safety receiving a higher priority. So in short, like when you first turn on your vehicle, there's that kind of lag where you just, you press buttons and it takes a second or two for things to function. And that's apparently related to a bunch of safety systems getting priority, and they're busy trying to do a whole bunch of calculations and stuff with the computer to try to get the car ready to drive. The eyesight system has to, get initialized. Climate settings are also in there as well in terms of high priority, as well as navigation. So all of this stuff has to turn on and get calibrated, the telemetric system, the audio system, HVAC, all this stuff. So initializing all of that stuff takes time when you first turn on your vehicle, just like turning on any computer. When you turn on your tablet or your phone, you have to wait a second for it to kind of fully wake up and fully come on. That's the same thing on the Outback, so something you want to be aware of, that's going to happen. All right, so the next issue is related to voice recognition. So this is the little button that you press on the left side of the steering wheel, And I actually am curious why Subaru chose this language. If you read the manual, it clearly states in the owner's quick start guide that when using Bluetooth with an iPhone, you should be able to long press the voice recognition button on the steering wheel. And especially with Bluetooth, it says you'll be able to access Siri that way. That is not how it works. It does not work that way. I really hope there's a software update to fix that issue. I would consider that a bug. But in this TechTIPS Special Edition newsletter, they say that is not a bug. What they say is that it's a function of how Android Auto and CarPlay work themselves. Like it's not anything that they can control, and you actually need to have you actually need to be using CarPlay or Android Auto. So if you've had, in my other vehicles I've owned, I was able to use Siri by long pressing the voice recognition button on those vehicles, and I didn't have to use CarPlay or Android Auto to get that. And they're saying that for whatever reason in this particular configuration, you do have to be using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which means you need to have your phone plugged in. And then that, a lot of owners have pointed out, creates additional problems with a whole bunch of other issues related to call quality and a whole bunch of other problems that are associated with that. Unfortunately, they're saying that this is just the way it's going to work. So hopefully we'll be able to get an update and get that fixed eventually. The next issue I haven't experienced. It's related to Android Auto and the volume adjustment, where it says there are instances while using Android Auto when the audio volume intermittently cannot be adjusted. Instead, the notification volume is being adjusted when the volume control knob is used, and so on. So this condition can occur because Android Auto operation is being prioritized over the infotainment system. So they say that this condition is temporary and will clear eventually. To expedite clearing and regain faster volume control of the audio source, there are some workarounds. So if you have an Android Auto and you're having problems with volume adjustment, volume lag when you change the volume, here's what you need to do. One option is to relaunch Android Auto by disconnecting and reconnecting the phone to the system, or short press the talk button to start the native voice recognition system and then say cancel after the beep is heard. The procedure from the owner's manual regarding sound output can also be used, and replacement of the head unit will not fix this. So if you're having some issues with Android Auto, that's what Subaru recommends you do to kind of get around that problem. Like I said, I haven't tested that or experienced that, but that's something you want to be aware of. The next is Android Auto launch. So the vehicle has to be parked. They're saying that the vehicle has to be parked and the parking brake has to be set to on in order to complete initial pairing process between the central computer here and a phone running Android Auto. So I'm not sure why, but if you need to connect Android Auto, they're saying you need to be parked with a parking brake set, and then you can connect and it will work. So it's a good practice to confirm an undamaged, genuine cable as well. That's what they mentioned. And this is true for Apple CarPlay as well. If you're having issues with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, make sure you're using a really good high quality cable, preferably one directly from Apple or from the manufacturer. That way you know you're not using like a cheap Chinese cable or something like that that's just really low quality. And that will solve a lot of issues for most owners. At least that's what we're hearing from the owners community. So that's something to be aware of. The next is Android Auto connection failures. This is sort of similar, and this is sort of like after you've paired to Android Auto, you keep having communication errors. Most notably, you get communication error. It says Android Auto encountered an error, communication error 12. So if you're getting that issue, again, that's a known bug, a known issue, and it's generally related to the cable being a poor quality cable, Subaru says. So you might want to get that new cable out. Now, there's a bunch of issues with Android Auto, so hopefully Subaru and the Android folks will be able to work out some solutions to some of these issues in a future update. Our next issue is related to phone book contacts and downloading of the phone book contacts. Now, one thing that you can do here, if you want to force this, is you can come in here to settings, let that load, come over here to phone, right here, and then you can come in here to phone book, and you can change some things in here. You want to make sure that this is set up right. You want to make sure that automatically you already have this. You have this automatically downloaded phone book recent calls selected, things like that, and then you want to make sure that that's enabled. So that's something that you might come up with. You can also choose sync contacts when you actually have it set up. So it says select Bluetooth settings, and then under My Devices, click the I symbol next to the connected devices to confirm sync contacts and show notifications. This is back under the devices here. So if we actually look at, say, Manage Devices, we can see the device here. If we come in here, and you can disconnect and reconnect that. Sometimes that'll cause the phone book to be re-downloaded as well. So that's something you can do. I haven't really had any problems with the phone book disappearing, but if you do, you can play around with some of these settings in here and see if you can get that phone book to re-download. So something to be aware of. It does say that the system can store only 2,000 phone numbers. So if you have a bunch of different numbers in there, be aware that the limit is 2,000 and you can't download more than that. So that's something to be aware of. All right, the next is related to playback of the audio files using a USB memory device. So some owners have mentioned they've had problems with this, with the sort order being wrong and it not playing right and things like that. There's other general issues with that. And it says that the USB audio playback screen can be accessed by using the media icon on the home screen. So if you come in here to media, this is how you access your Bluetooth audio right here, and this is how you would access your USB audio. If you've transferred a bunch of audio files, maybe like an audiobook or something like that, to a USB stick, you're going to go in there and select that. The USB communications format's USB 2.0, so the USB ports at the bottom of the display near the shift lever are USB 2.0. It needs to be formatted for FAT32, and it supports M4A, MP3, WMA, WAV file, FLAC, and M4A files. I don't know why they listed that twice, but it supports those files. It says it supports AAC as well. So if you do have issues with that, make sure that you're using a good USB stick that's formatted properly, that there aren't any errors or issues with the USB stick. It's not old or anything like that. Maybe get a new one, or get a second one. Make sure that's not the issue. And then make sure that you're using the right supported file extensions. Now, it doesn't mention anything in here with respect to USB play order or anything like that. So hopefully we can see an improvement there in the future. So the next thing that they mention at the very end is that the quality team, there's a special quality team at Subaru that is looking for quality issues related to the 2020 Outback. And one thing that's really important that you need to know is that you need to go to your retailer to get help. If you call Subaru directly, they're just going to tell you to go to the retailer. The Subaru retailer dealership, the service department there, they need to file information, what they call QMRs. They need to file a QMR with Subaru with your information. And if they're not familiar with which failure codes or access codes to select, tell them to look at this special edition of TechTIPS, this one here that says, this came out in November of 2019, TechTIPS Special Edition. This is what they need to find. In the very last page has these QMR codes that they need to use. This allows them to file warranty information, make sure they get paid for helping to diagnose your vehicle. And those files or those reports need to be filed through the retailer. Otherwise, Subaru just can't, there's no way they're going to be able to fix the problems. So if you're having problems with your Outback and you want to know what's going on, you want to get some help solving them, go right to your retailer. Make sure the service department is aware of this TechTIPS newsletter and that they're reading the TechTIPS newsletter. There's so much information in the 2020 Outback in the TechTIPS newsletter letters, and there have been over the last several months, and they need to be aware of what's going on in there. So have them read that stuff. So that's something you want to be aware of. So again, we just kind of walked through this newsletter, a little bit informal in this video and a little bit longer than usual. But I really appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. I do want to mention, if you've waited through this entire video, there is a pretty strong bit of information that's floating around the internet that Subaru will be releasing a software update in January. Now, we're going to do a separate video on how to get ready for software updates, but apparently it's going to fix 150 different issues, including improving Apple CarPlay and how much screen size it takes up, changing the size of these fan controls, and a bunch of other bug fixes and enhancements are supposedly in the works. So hopefully we'll have some of those issues resolved as we hear more. So be looking for that, and be looking for our video coming out soon on how to get your car ready for software updates. So as I mentioned before, our test vehicle today has been the 2020 Subaru Outback Limited XT. I don't work for Subaru or a Subaru retailer. I'm making these videos just to help other owners get the most out of their Outback. And I really appreciate you guys watching. If you guys know of issues that you're having or common complaints or questions, put those in the comments below. Let other owners know what's going on so that they can learn from you guys and get the most out of their Outbacks as well. Thanks for watching.